Hello, everybody. It's now Sunday lunchtime, and we are getting towards the end of our New Music Dublin festival this time around. But before we go, and we have a few other things this afternoon, we cannot leave New Music Dublin without doing the Totally Made Up Orchestra, which is a fixture. Yes, Brian Irvine celebrates. I have with me here Brian Irvine. Well, I don't actually, because I am in Scotland and he is in Northern Ireland. So, with in a Zoom sense. Um, and Brian and I are going to chat very briefly about what on earth the Totally Made Up Orchestra is. I threatened to ask him why, but he will never answer that question. So, Brian,
Yo,
hello.
how
Tell
you
me
doing?
about Totally Made Up Orchestra.
Well, as you know, John, the Totally Made Up Orchestra was a kind of an idea that we both kind of concocted, I believe, would be fair to say.
You,
Um,
are
I
you actually
think,
putting the blame on me here?
yes, entirely. It's all your fault. I had nothing to do with it. Essentially, I think the first one we did, John, was the first New Music Dublin, wasn't it? And so the idea essentially was that we would set up a sort of a kind of an orchestra where it was the criteria for being part of the orchestra was any age, any ability, any instrument, and then I suppose there was another criteria as well, and that was that we would we'd only play stuff that was made by the orchestra, and within quite a short space of time. So the idea was we'd get all these people together from whatever backgrounds, whatever instruments, and then over the course of like a couple of hours, we would make something in the 2 hours, and then we would perform it. And so we did that the first New Music Festival, and then we did like sort of 2 hours or an hour and a half. I can't really remember. I think it's about 2 hours of just making stuff. And then we did like a performance which lasted for about 20 minutes of the stuff that we had made in the 2 hours.
It's
That was great.
it has a very peculiar form of its own magic. I would say is how I describe it.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I love it, and in many and in many ways, I mean, it's one of those things where you never really know what you're going to do until you're actually in the room with people. And I mean, as you know, we've had so many different kinds of people involved in that. And I think the last one we did last year was the biggest one we'd done actually, and we had like every I think the youngest was probably about 4 or 5 or something. The last one, and the oldest would have been 80s and beyond, and just from every kind of dimension of music interest, which is lovely.
You also inveigled the participants into doing Big Mistake, which was the projections you did last year, that are
Yeah,
also being projected this year out and around Dublin. So if anyone has the
that's
time to go and have a look, there are a few sites around Dublin where they're being projected big time. Um, they are deeply charming, those things, because they watch. It's like that Zinedine Zidane film where it only watches just him as a footballer. The Big
yeah,
Mistake watches
yeah.
just those participants whilst they're playing or not playing, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
It is lovely. It's something very lovely just about watching people do the thing that they're doing in quite a concentrated manner. Because I think that's the thing about the Totally Made Up Orchestra. I mean, it demands so much concentration. Like you're even, and it's really interesting the way the things that we're asking people to do or things that they're contributing. They involve so much concentrating, either concentrating on their playing or concentrating on the thing that are interpreting the thing that they're supposed to be interpreting. So it's quite intense. So it's lovely just to have this kind of close up of people as they do the thing that they're doing.
So how are you getting around the? Because of course this year we can't put people in a room together
Yeah,
for obvious reasons.
yeah,
We're using the dreaded Zoom as we currently are.
yeah.
Are you going to let us know at all about your approach to conquering Zoom with the?
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't know, but and it's like everything, in relation to the Totally Made Up Orchestra, everything starts from the sort of moment that people are there, and kind of we kind of connect on some level about what it is that people do. I have an idea really about how when previously in years we've basically started to make noises and sounds and directives to make sounds and so on. And I kind of like this idea of exploring this frame, this kind of zoom frame that we have here, like even just trying to move your finger along the top edge there. So this kind of landscape window that we've got, I like the idea of perhaps translating some of the ideas of making sounds into the idea of making shapes and gestures and movement and so on. And so we're going to explore this canvas in a different way, other than uh, different types of sounds, different types of movements, different types of instructions, and also about the connection between when you've got lots of these windows on the screen. Everyone can see the windows, and there's a kind of about exploring the connection between the windows. A bit like old celebrity squares, or even in that classic case of the young ones when they're doing University Challenge, where I can actually sort of, punch you. you know, so that's the inspiration, But also, I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of collection as well, because the interesting thing about Zoom is you can only really hear one window at a time when someone's saying. So that's something we're going to explore is like, well, if you do something in that window, can I hear you and can I record that? And can somebody else do something in another window? Can I hear them and record that? So it's going to be a bit of a foraging exercise about collecting stuff, and it's also going to be a bit of a visual sort of journey. So I have absolutely no idea where it's going to go, but I know it's going to end in something. That's the only thing about the Totally Made Up Orchestra, is that it always ends in something. So, and that's quite nice.
I was actually just thinking that there's the audio equivalent of that young ones thing. Now, of course, the trouble
Yeah,
is we are of a certain generation. I hesitate to include you in my ancientness here.
likewise.
The so the young ones and where they bash the word University Challenge, they kick through from the top down to the bottom, which of course is a kind of visual gag. The Goons did one where they dropped a bomb on the record during the whilst it's playing, and then it starts playing the other side because they fall through. So
Uh,
I'm waiting for the Totally Made Up Orchestra equivalent of that. Zoom bombing.
yeah,
Can explode from one window to the other. Anyway,
yeah.
let's see. It is all yet to be played for.
And I think there's so many different aspects of it as well. There's so many different sort of aspects of Zoom, which I think we're probably just going to interrogate. And this idea is that, the normal Zoom thing is like you and me, like the way we are now, kind of talking to each other. But what happens if we like take that camera or we take that laptop and we move it around, or we explore different spaces? And, there's all sorts of investigations, I suppose we're gonna. But like the key thing about the Totally Made Up Orchestra, and this is like the critical thing, no matter what it is, I suppose we're moving into a slightly different dimension in this particular project. There's always an element of theatrics, if you like, with the Totally Made Up Orchestra to some extent, and so I think this is the constraints that we're living under the minute allow us to explore something that we wouldn't normally explore, which is more to do with perhaps more to do with the slightly more abstract visual absurdness or something, something, and just yeah. So it's a real opportunity, because what happens in Totally Made Orchestra is that pretty much everyone who weighs in is just up for crack, and they just want to do something and make something, And I think in that being up for the crack, you find things. So I always think of the Totally Made Up Orchestra as a big foraging machine, which kind of rolls through this big kind of forest of noise, and every now and then a wee clearing emerges, and you go, "Oh, that's beautiful," and then it forages somewhere through something else, and then another little clearing opens up from something, and you, "Oh, that's beautiful," or "That's crazy," or "That's all," and then it forages away. And so I think what we're going to try to do is forage in a slightly different way.
Wonderful, Brian. Thank you so much. That's great. Just while we're here, and I did say I was going to do this before we started recording this. Is I want to show the world my T-shirt, because this reminds me, as I said, some people get it and some people won't. But I've worn it throughout all these interviews, and you can't normally see it, but I wear
Well,
it. I should just display it. Some people get this immediately,
yes.
and some people will not. But it reminds me that almost whatever can go wrong probably actually will go wrong, including where the hell you think you're doing your press conference.
I think yeah, I think that's so lovely. I love things going wrong though. It often is the most exciting thing about anything, isn't it?
It is, yes, it is. We could talk about this for hours. What is the big mistake that is contemporary music? I mean, let's reference titles that have. There you go.
You know, it's all the good stuff lies in the wrongness of things. You know.
Ah, such profundity.
It's an early hour.
Anyway, look, we've got to get on with the show. So I have to call a halt to this and say, straight after this, we're going to go straight into the pre-recorded, indeed, totally made-up orchestra, assuming that Brian remembers to hit record at the workshop.
Yeah.
Um, the pre-recorded, totally made-up orchestra for our lockdown 2021 New Music Dublin. Thank you very much indeed, Brian.
Okay. Thanks, John.
How is school?
It's a pity you have
How
to
is
wait.
school? How is school?
It's a pity
How
you
is
have to
school?
wait.
How is school?
It's a pity you have
How
to
is
wait.
school? How is school?
It's a pity
How
you
is
have to
school?
wait.
How is school? How is school? How is school?
Renew your insurance today. Renew your insurance today. Today. Renew your insurance. Renew your insurance.
It's a pity you have to wait. It's a